So today we're talking about a pretty bold vision coming out of Ghana. We're talking about President John Mahama's plan, and it's a plan that starts right at home, but believe me, its ultimate goal is way bigger. We're talking about challenging the very structure of global power. So let's break this whole thing down. And that really brings us to the central question, doesn't it? I mean, can a single country, just by getting its own act together, actually have the leverage to reshape the entire world? That is the huge bet President Mahama is making. It sounds pretty ambitious, right? So let's see how exactly he plans to pull this off. All right, so first things first, let's talk about the man behind this vision, John Dramani Mahama. Now, he's not a newcomer to this job. He's served a term before. But here's the thing. His return? It's not just some simple political comeback. Nope. It's the starting pistol for this incredibly detailed strategy to boost the influence of not just Ghana, but the entire continent of Africa on the world stage. So here's a quick rundown of his journey. He first got the top job back in 2012, was out of office in 2017, and now he's back as of January 2025. And this isn't just a list of dates. What this really shows is years and years of experience that is absolutely shaping this huge new vision he has, not just for his country, but for the continent. Okay, so the whole strategy, and I mean the entire thing, really boils down to one simple idea. Success starts at home. The idea is pretty straightforward, but it's also incredibly powerful. Global influence, that's not something someone just hands to you. It's something you have to earn. And that process, that earning, it starts by building a rock-solid, stable nation, literally from the ground up. So what does this strong foundation actually look like in practice? Well, it's all built on these four key economic pillars. First up, you've got to get inflation under control. That's huge for protecting people's savings. Second, you stabilize the currency to make things predictable for everyone. Third, you run a tight ship with government finances, real discipline there. And finally, you create a climate that makes big international players want to invest. And listen, these aren't just dry domestic policies. These are massive signals to the rest of the world that Ghana is here to play, and they're serious. And this is really the heart of the whole strategy. Getting your own house in order, it's not just about making things better for your own people, it becomes your biggest bargaining chip in foreign policy. That domestic success turns into real diplomatic muscle. It's the proof of concept that gives Ghana the credibility to stand up and demand a much louder voice for the entire African continent. Okay, so once that foundation of success at home is solid, the vision gets bigger. Much bigger. The lens pulls back from just Ghana to the whole continent. And the goal here is nothing short of transforming Africa's role in the world, moving it from a passive receiver of aid to an active co-designer of its own future. And what you're seeing here is a massive paradigm shift. A total change in thinking. The old way of doing things viewed health as just a cost, and Africa as basically dependent on handouts. Well, Mahama's vision just completely flips that script. It says, no, health isn't a cost, it's a critical investment. It's a national security issue. And the endgame here is something called health sovereignty. Total game changer. So how do you actually build this sovereignty? Well, it comes down to a mix of very practical stuff and some core principles. On the practical side, you're talking about boosting local manufacturing and getting way better at pandemic preparedness, building true self-sufficiency. But then on the principle side, it's about demanding justice and respect, making sure Africa's own story is told truthfully, fighting for inclusive representation in those big global meetings, and absolutely taking a firm stand against racism and xenophobia. All right, so we've gone from a strong Ghana to a sovereign Africa. And now the strategy hits its final, and honestly, its most ambitious phase, resetting the entire global stage. This is the moment where all that leverage built up at home and across the continent gets put to use. It's about challenging the old world order and the institutions that have been running the show for decades. And the centerpiece of this whole final act is a concept called the Accra Reset. What is it? Well, it's a direct call to action. It's a demand to completely reimagine how the world is run, especially when it comes to things like global health and development. The goal is simple but profound, to make sure Africa has a seat at the table. Not as a guest, but as a genuine co-architect, helping design the solutions for everyone. But look, to really get why this reset is so needed, you have to ask a pretty basic question. Who actually holds the power when the big global decisions get made? The way things are set up right now, it's basically a fossil from the post-World War II era. And Mahama's whole point is that this system, which is over 75 years old now, is way, way overdue for an update. It just doesn't reflect the world we live in today. And this right here shows you exactly what we're talking about. If you look at the UN Security Council, the ultimate power, the power to stop any resolution in its tracks with a veto, that power is held by just 5 countries, the permanent members. And the argument is pretty clear. This setup, where so much power is in so few hands, is just a relic of a past era. It doesn't make sense anymore. So what's the fix? What's the proposal on the table? Well, it's not actually about getting rid of the veto power altogether. It's more about creating a system of checks and balances. The idea is to create a new mechanism that would let the entire UN General Assembly, the place where every single nation gets a voice, to actually challenge and maybe even override a veto from one of those 5 permanent members. Okay, let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture here. What we've just walked through is this really clear inside-out strategy for how to gain influence on the world stage. It's basically a blueprint, and it's all built on this one powerful idea, that real, lasting power in the world doesn't come from the outside. It starts with what you build at home. You can really boil this whole ambitious plan down to 3 essential steps. Step 1, build up your strength at home. Good governance, stable economy. Get your house in order. Step 2, use that new strength to help foster sovereignty and self-sufficiency across the entire continent. And finally, Step 3, you take that collective power and you use it to demand a new, fairer global order. See? It's a really clear, logical, and honestly, a very powerful progression. And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty provocative question to chew on. In a world that's full of complex problems and constantly shifting alliances, could it be that a country's internal health, its economic stability, its social unity, its good governance, is actually the most powerful currency you can have in modern diplomacy? If you were to ask President Mahama, his answer would be a very clear, very loud yes.